Hi, and welcome to another episode of NCBA's Coffee Break. I'm Nathan Wilner, your host, and today we have a really special guest, Adam Cleveland, a very active attorney, member of the National Creditors Bar Association and many other organizations as well, who wants to share some important news about work he's doing with advocacy in his state. And I'm just really excited to welcome him to today's show. So, Adam, welcome.
Hey Nathan, thanks for having me on. And yeah, I have finally reached the kind of end game for all of the advocacy work we started back when we did NARCA 2.0 and decided to become the advocacy organization we are now. I guess you were the internal version of that, having an actual lobbyist and staff, and now we've seen what I've done and what we've been working toward play out in me running for our state General Assembly here in Georgia.
So
Um,
that's exciting. Everyone's hearing that here first, that a member of NCBA is taking advocacy to the next level and really throwing his hat into the ring. So tell us a little bit about what got you here, what your district's like, what is the probability of victory, because it's really exciting news.
Yeah, so it is exciting. It's also not easy, but that's the trouble with all of us who actually have jobs is that politics isn't meant for us to be a part of it, but we need to be, and that's kind of something that you and I've been preaching for years through the SBA forum, and when NARCA 2.0 became NCBA, and we started doing our advocacy. One of the things that happened kind of sort of right after that was that here in Georgia, I got thrust into a role in a task force to rewrite our state garnishment law, which had been declared unconstitutional, and discovered how relatively easy it is to get a bill passed if you know what you're doing and know who to talk to. And so, as you're aware, I've been back a few times and gotten some more bills passed in our field, so that Georgia has moved in a positive direction for collections here. But we've learned a lot of lessons along the way about how to make sure that you are looking at interests of opposing sides. And in my race, particularly in this case, we've got a district that is a very swing district. It's considered one of the top three most flippable ones in the state at this time. And the incumbent got it by about got some fraction of like 3,000 votes, I think, last time out of 40,000. And it went the opposite way of his party in the general and in the presidential election. So, like I said, people are throwing money at it. They're looking at it heavily. Both parties are fighting it hard, but it's likely to flip. Especially compared to others in the state. And if we flip it and a few more, then we will have a majority in the House, which means that we can put forward legislation that will pass. Which means for our industry, some of the things we've been looking to do, not just in the garnishment front, but for some other aspects of our practice, could actually go forward, meaning that we change things from giving no meaningful enforcement against limited purpose entities or kind of small sole proprietor LLCs. We've got ineffective law on that we can change. There's so many things we can do for ourselves that we've been stymied by because few people want to sponsor creditors' bills in the legislature from any party because they tend to be, you know, because not despite what they have or how technical they might be or accurate or useful to everyone, they're often looked at as unpleasant because of who they come from. But realistically, everyone at any given point in their lives needs to be able to enforce contracts or repayment of funds that are owed. And it's just, it's a law that you need to have available that you might not want to think about until you do.
Yeah, and Adam, one of the things that we've kind of worked on together, and we really have come up together in our advocacy work. As being a previous chair of the SCBA Leadership Forum and other initiatives, I really saw how you build, bridges in that, you're not all about the creditors, that there is a very strong consumer protection component in the way you look at these things. And that might be something people would be surprised about.
And I think that's one of the great things we have in Georgia, and as compared to some states where it's a lot more fractious, is that most of us in the creditors bar here are pretty close friends with the folks in the consumer bar, work together on cases, getting resolutions cooperatively all the time. And when we do go to legislate, we listen to the other because I mean, some of our creditors lawyers here are switch hitters, and vice versa. We don't. It is not again this great schism between the two sides because really everyone's representing people and entities that acknowledge common reality, which is becoming more scarce, I'm sorry to say, nationwide, but here we've kind of got a grip on it, and it makes it easy to say, okay, this is something that if I'm on the receiving end of this law, I want to make sure that these protections are in place for my sake. And if I need to use this law, we need to have these things to make it effective. And everyone can look at the same information, the same practice. And again, a lot of us who are actually in the courts are better suited to do that than the folks who are currently legislating because our legislature has shed lawyers by the dozens in the last several years. But those who practice actively, you get that and kind of the interplay of how what you're going to put on paper is going to work out in practice when you have to go use it or defend it. And so we kind of have that commonality between both sides of the consumer and creditor equation too.
Yeah, and it's so important for people to understand that strong creditors' rights laws and regulations really equal strong consumer protection laws and implementation because that's really compliance equals consumer protection. I mean that's what it's about.
I think Georgia got the balance right, right? We still struggle with the FDCPA because it went so weighted in one direction without considering the consequences of what it was saying. Things it did were over jurisdictional limits and those kinds of things were unnecessary, and it became more of a sword than a shield. But here in Georgia, what we pass is, are laws that, while they give you the tool you need to accomplish a reasonable societal goal, it does provide protection in the same breath. So we're not sitting there, arming one side and disarming the other. It's just necessary for the person who needs to right a wrong to have the option to do it under our law. And it's necessary that if you are on the receiving end of that action, that if it's mistaken, you have protection too.
Yeah. So Adam, tell me about, you know, uh, if I was running for office, I'd be nervous, am I going to throw my hat out there and no one's gonna, it's like, am I going to throw a party and no one's going to come? That kind of situation. Tell me, what's the feedback been? How are people reacting to your candidacy? What are your constituents
Well,
thinking? How's it
it's been
feeling?
shockingly positive. And running as a creditors attorney, but as a Democrat in Georgia, is surprising to people. But it's, again, given that Georgia is not a state where, for our practice area, you have to be partisan in order to do it well. It's been shockingly well received, from neighbors to colleagues to people across the aisle and across the bar. um, they had it has been great. The support's been great, and it kind of speaks to how well we've all worked together, especially in practice down here. That I've been able to lean on so many folks who have been even opposing counsel to donate and to support the candidacy, and then talking to folks who have looked for someone because particularly in my district where we're looking at as an incumbent who has not been particularly courageous in legislation, and we need some big moves on fronts besides just creditors' rights that could be done by somebody who's willing to put their neck out there and who doesn't want a political career. I think that's what's held back a lot of our political candidates over the years is that the idea of being a politician was appealing to them and that they wanted to do the things that furthered that goal. For us, for me particularly, that's not of interest at all. You and I have been through enough legislative practice to know this is not what we want to do with our lives. But right now, it's necessary to accomplish things that, not just ourselves, but those around us need. And then our practice area has things it needs to, and those can all get done within, hopefully the next dozen years or less so that we set up a situation where everyone has access to equal justice and equal rights, but also equal ability to do contract enforcement of the things that we believe are good and right for everyone as well.
Yeah, and it really is. It's the complying with the law, and people don't understand that lawyers sometimes you could be on the in the criminal law context. There's prosecutors, and many times people leave the prosecutor's office and become a defense attorney. And it doesn't mean that they are a bad person or that they changed their whole ideology, because their ideology is the application of the law, regardless of political feelings. And I think on the state level and the local level, that polarization that we see, in Washington, D.C., doesn't really hit the same way. You really can bring people together in a way that's almost surprising.
I'm very fortunate to live in one of those places because there are spots within certain states, like Georgia is obviously a swing state that's been in the news for about a decade now for that reason. So we're a national leader in kind of having a balance in our politics and our political leanings. But there are counties where that is not as well split as it is here in the metro Atlanta area. So I'm very fortunate to be in a place where even talking to folks who have voted opposite my current party, their ideology and mine is not that distant. There are usually a lot of commonalities, and usually it's been about one thing, one issue that moved them over for that election, and that's great because for you and I and folks that again aren't interested in being political, political for our careers, you can talk about issues and say this is where I stand, and move folks because you're not there to say what they want to hear. You're there to say what they need to hear and what you need to accomplish. And those things usually line up pretty well with your neighbors.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really exciting. So tell me, when is the election and what can people listening do to help you out? Like, how can
Cool.
other members of NCBA say, we need our first NCBA member to be elected to, elected office? What can we do?
So this is a true midterm election, so it'll happen in November of this year. And by the instructions of all those who do this regularly or in the business of politics, the goal for the next 5 to 6 months is almost entirely fundraising, because you have to build up so that by the middle of the summer or late summer, you then start spending everything you've built up to try to make sure that everyone who is a voter in your district hears that you exist, hears what you stand for, and gets a chance to see you or see someone on your behalf directly during those last few months before the election. So if anyone is willing to support a campaign like this, that's what I need. And if we get that support, we will likely win. So far, it's been tremendous. So far, we've been very fortunate in who has reached out and put us at what I'm told are very high numbers for a campaign at this stage of the process. But it's going to be a well-funded campaign against us, and so the folks that can contribute anything, every little bit helps. And those of us in collections know if you do recurring donations, even small amounts, that builds up. So
See?
don't be shy about throwing in there and saying, "Hey, every month this much is going to come your way," because they do stack, and we've all lived that reality, and it's wonderful to see it play out. And oddly, that the job is calling people for money every single day lines up with what we've been doing for the last 2 decades is really a nice coincidence. They
Uh,
say, "Well,
I, I love it. I love it that you get to use your creditors' rights legal skills to help with your political campaign. So, do you have a website? Where can folks go to contribute if
yes,
they
thanks
find
for
out more?
asking." It's adamcleveland.com. So again, just Adam Cleveland, CLEVELAND.com. And you can go and contribute, sign up for recurring donations, and sign up for our campaign updates because that's how we activate folks who do our phone trees later or who will reach out, who can, host events in the area. So it's great if anyone, and I'm doing the same thing. I'm looking at national races where I hear about somebody who's in a swing district or in a swing state and throwing some money at those things too. And again, if everyone that hears about these and thinks it's a good cause throws something at it, that also builds up very fast and really can make a huge difference in the long run because we can't get to every single door in our district, but we can get broadcasting to the folks who need to know that we're out there and they have an option better than what they might have right now.
Yep. And anyone listening who lives in the Atlanta area, um, there's no like guy running for office. It doesn't need people helping knock on those doors and hand out those flyers and hand out those door hanging things. So anyone who's listening, I'm sure Adam could use your help. Look him up, and he'll put you to work. So with that, I think we're getting to the end of our cup of coffee, so to speak. So Adam, you get what's your final statement for our listeners today?
So this is the culmination of years of us saying that we and everyone else that is in the creditors' rights section needs to be looking at how to advocate for yourselves in your own states because the states are where we can make the biggest difference and change the national perception of our industry. So after all the years of pitching for a better FDCPA or its non-applicability to our section and for going to the state legislature and changing things, I am now here doing the very thing that we ask others to do for us, which is write laws. And if I can do that for the next few years, if I can get in that space, more of us can do it, and we can change the idea that we are in some way bad guys. We're just people who have ideas of how to accomplish goals that everyone needs, and this is a route to finish that off.
That's amazing. Making the system better. That's what we're all trying to do is create a more perfect world for everyone. And Adam, you're not just talking the talk, you're walking the walk. So I'm really proud of you. And I hope everyone who's listening will take a look at your campaign, find out what you're all about. And with that, that's we're gonna leave it for today. So to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Adam, for joining us. Stay engaged, and most importantly, stay caffeinated. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks.
Seven.